The Morumbi Stadium in São Paulo, Brazil fell silent. It was June 2018, and the summer heat pressed down on the massive concrete structure like a heavy blanket. But inside the press conference room, the temperature seemed to rise even higher as Brazilian football legend Carlos Mendes leaned into the microphone with a smirk that had become his trademark over 30 years of professional football. At 52 years old, Carlos had won 3 World Cups, scored over 400 career goals, and was considered one of the greatest strikers in football history. His opinion carried weight across continents. When he spoke, the football world listened. Today, he was speaking about the upcoming international friendly match between Brazil's national team and the Philippines. The match had been organized as part of a goodwill tour, a chance for smaller football nations to gain experience against world-class opposition. For Brazil, it was meant to be a warm-up, a light training session disguised as a competitive match. For the Philippines, it was supposed to be an honor just to share the same pitch as legends. But when a Filipino journalist asked Carlos what he thought about the Philippine team's chances, his smirk widened into something crueler. Chances, he repeated, letting the word hang in the air. My friend, Filipinos are basketball players. You're tall, you can jump, you have good hands. But football, real football. He shook his head slowly, theatrically. This is a Brazilian game, a South American art. You can't learn this in a few years. Your players will run around. They'll try hard, but they won't understand the game the way we do. Filipinos can't play real football. The room erupted in laughter from the Brazilian press. A few journalists nodded in agreement. The Filipino reporter sat down, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. The clip went viral within hours, spreading across Filipino social media like wildfire. Comments flooded in, most of them furious. Who does he think he is? We'll show him. Pinoy pride. But in a modest hotel room across Sao Paulo, Philippine national team coach Ramon Remy Torres sat quietly watching the clip on his phone, his face unreadable. His players gathered round him, 23 young men ranging from ages 19 to 31. Most of them products of street football in Manila, Cebu, Davao. None of them had trained at prestigious European academies. None of them had multi-million-dollar contracts. But every single one of them had grown up playing football in the tight alleys of Filipino neighborhoods, where space was limited, creativity was essential, and pride was everything. Remy looked up at his players. Did you all see this? Heads nodded. Jaws were clenched. Good, Remy said calmly. Now forget about anger. Remember where you come from. Remember how you learned to play. Remember that Brazilian football is beautiful, yes, but Filipino football is smart. The team captain, 28-year-old midfielder Daniel Cruz, spoke up. Coach, we're not even ranked in the top 100 in the world. Brazil is number 2. How do we win? Remy interrupted, his small smile forming. We don't try to play their game. We play ours. The next morning, 72 hours before the match, Remy held a closed training session. No press allowed. No cameras. He gathered his players in a circle on the practice pitch and explained his strategy. Brazilian football is about rhythm, flow, individual brilliance. They want space to operate. Beautiful passes, elegant dribbling. What we're going to do is take away that space. We're going to make this field feel like a Manila side street, narrow, chaotic, unpredictable. He pulled out a tactical board and began drawing. We press high, we press constantly. 2 forwards, 3 attacking midfielders, 5 defenders who push up. We don't give them time to think. When we have the ball, we move at fast one touch to touch maximum. We use the skills you learn playing in alleys, where you couldn't take big touches because there wasn't room. Short passes, quick combinations, sudden changes of direction. Defender Luis Santos raised his hand. Coach, they're bigger than us. Faster. More technical. Maybe, Remy acknowledged. But we're hungrier. And hunger beats comfort every time. Match day arrived. The Morumbi Stadium, with a capacity of 67,000, was only half full. Most fans didn't think the match would be competitive enough to warrant a full house. The Brazilian starting 11 featured 5 players from Europe's top leagues, including their star striker Ronaldo Silva, who played for Barcelona, and midfielder Joe Ferreira from Real Madrid. The Philippine 11 featured players from domestic leagues, a few from Southeast Asian clubs, and just one who played in Europe's second division. The height difference was obvious during the national anthems. The average Brazilian player stood at 6 feet tall. The average Filipino player was 5'8". Carlos Mendes, now serving as a pundit for Brazilian television, sat in the broadcast booth and repeated his earlier assessment. I stand by what I said. This will be a training exercise for Brazil. The referee blew the whistle. The match began. Brazil started with confidence, passing the ball smoothly between their backline. Probing for openings, João received the ball in midfield and turned, expecting space to survey his options instead. He was immediately swarmed by 3 Filipino players, Daniel in the center, 2 wingers collapsing inward. Surprised, João tried to shield the ball, but Daniel's foot sneaked in and poked it away. The ball went to Filipino winger Marco Reyes, who immediately played a quick pass forward to striker Tommy Velasco. Tommy took one touch and shot from 25 yards. The ball sailed just over the crossbar. Carlos Mendes laughed in the booth. Lucky pressing won't last. But it did last. For 15 minutes, the Filipinos pressed relentlessly, never giving Brazilian midfielders more than 2 seconds on the ball. Brazil tried to adjust, playing longer passes to bypass the press, but the Filipino defenders were positioned perfectly, reading the passes and intercepting. When Brazil did manage to get into the attacking third, they found themselves crowded out by bodies, unable to find the passing lanes they were used to. At the 20-minute mark, frustration began to show on Brazilian faces. Ronaldo Silva, Brazil's star striker, received a through ball and found himself one-on-one with Filipino goalkeeper Peter Alvarez. It should have been a certain goal. Ronaldo shaped to shoot, but at the last second, Peter didn't dive, he stood tall, making himself big, reading Ronaldo's eyes. The shot went straight at him. Peter caught it cleanly and immediately threw it out to his right back, starting a counterattack. The ball moved quickly up the field right back to Daniel. Daniel to Marco. Marco to Tommy. Tommy back to advancing midfielder Carlo Ramos. 5 passes in 8 seconds. Brazil's defenders scrambled to get back, but they weren't used to defending against this kind of speed. Carlo received the ball at the edge of the box, faked right, went left, and slid a perfect pass to Tommy, who had made a diagonal run. Tommy didn't hesitate. One touch, inside of the foot, bottom corner. Goal. Philippines 1, Brazil 0. The stadium went silent. Then, from a small section in the stands where a few hundred Filipino fans had gathered, migrant workers living in São Paulo who had saved money to attend an explosion of noise. Screams, tears, flags waving. On the field, the Filipino players mobbed Tommy, but their celebration lasted only 15 seconds. Remy was already shouting from the sideline, "Back. Press again. Don't stop." Carlos Mendes sat frozen in the broadcast booth, his mouth slightly open. His co-commentator, equally shocked, finally spoke. "Carlos, what just happened?" Brazil came out furious in the second half. Their coach made substitutions, bringing on fresh legs, demanding more intensity. For 10 minutes, they dominated possession, camping in the Filipino half, throwing everything forward. The pressure was enormous. Filipino defenders blocked shots, threw their bodies in front of passes, cleared headers off the line. Peter made 3 incredible saves. The crowd began to believe Brazil would equalize. Then, in the 63rd minute, something changed. Brazil won a corner kick. Everyone pushed forward, including their centre-backs. The corner came in, high and looping. Peter jumped and punched it clear. The ball landed at Daniel's feet near the halfway line. He looked up and saw what the Brazilians hadn't noticed: all their defenders were still in the Filipino box. The entire field was open. Daniel took off running, not dribbling fancy, just sprinting as fast as his legs would carry him. 2 Brazilian defenders turned and chased, but Daniel had a head start. As they closed in, he looked right, faking a pass to Marco, who was sprinting on the wing. The defenders shifted. At the last possible second, Daniel pushed the ball forward and shot from 30 yards. The Brazilian goalkeeper, caught off his line, scrambled back. The ball sailed over his outstretched fingers and dropped into the net. Philippines 2, Brazil 0. The stadium erupted in boos from Brazilian fans, but the noise was drowned out by the roar from the Filipino section. Daniel didn't celebrate elaborately, he just pointed to the Filipino flag on his chest and ran back. To his half, Remy clenched his fists on the sideline, allowing himself a brief smile before returning to tactical instructions. Brazil scored a consolation goal in the 85th minute, a beautiful strike from outside the box that gave them a sliver of pride. But when the final whistle blew, the scoreboard told the story that would echo around the world. Brazil won, Philippines 2. The Filipino players collapsed on the field, some crying, some laughing, all exhausted. Brazilian players stood in stunned silence, unable to process what had just happened. Carlos Mendes left the broadcast booth without finishing his post-match analysis. Later that night, footage emerged of him in the stadium tunnel, approaching Remy Torres with an outstretched hand. "Coach," Carlos said quietly, cameras capturing every word. "I was wrong, completely wrong. Your players taught me something today, that football isn't about where you train or how much money you have. It's about heart, intelligence, and pride. I apologize for my disrespect. You've earned my admiration." Remy shook his hand. "We didn't play to embarrass you, Carlos. We played to honor our country. But I accept your apology. Maybe now the world will see that Filipino footballers deserve respect." The handshake went viral, accumulating over 180 million views across social media platforms. The match was replayed on sports channels worldwide. Football analysts broke down the Filipino tactics, praising the high press system, the quick transitions, the disciplined defensive shape. Scouts from European clubs began looking more seriously at Filipino players. Within a year, 3 players from that team signed contracts with clubs in Europe and Asia. But the real impact was felt back home in the Philippines. Youth football registration increased by 300% in the following 6 months. Kids who had only played basketball started picking up footballs. Street leagues formed in barangays across the country. The phrase "Filipinos can't play real football" became a rallying cry. A reminder that doubt from others could fuel determination within. Daniel Cruz, the team captain who scored the second goal, returned to Manila a hero. He didn't sign with a European club instead. He chose to stay and develop Filipino football from within, coaching youth teams and building academies in underserved communities. The world is starting to respect Filipino football, he said in an interview. But respect isn't given. It's earned, and we're just getting started. The lesson from that day in São Paulo echoes beyond football. It speaks to every Filipino who has been told they're too small, too inexperienced, too far from the center of their field to compete. It says that advantages aren't always physical, they can be mental, creative, cultural. The Filipinos won because they didn't try to be Brazilian. They were proudly, defiantly Filipino. They used their street smarts, their hunger, their refusal to accept limitations. Carlos Mendes learned that day what many have learned before him. Never underestimate the heart of someone fighting to prove their worth, the Filipino spirit forged through centuries of resilience. Adaptation and pride doesn't need validation from legends, but when legends finally open their eyes and see it, they can't help but respect it.